Are you ready to become a leader and change maker by getting your PhD? Ready to stop stressing and actually take action so you create offer letters instead of rejections? Then this is the spot for you. I'm Dr. Natalie Morse, and I'm here to help you get into your dream PhD with full funding. Let's go. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Dr. Natalie Morse, and you guys are going to love hearing all about Carter and his journey through linguistics in different spaces. He's about to finish his thesis right now. He's also a lecturer and teaches Greek and Latin at New St. Andrews College in Idaho. So I think you're going to love hearing his story on his approach to his PhD. Welcome, Carter.
Thank you so much for having me.
People are always curious, at least my people. They always do a little bit of analysis and comparing themselves to others, which we can talk about the pros and cons. But could you maybe tell us a little bit about your background? So when people are like, oh, he did it, what about me? We can get to know where you're coming from and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I have a weird background, which may help people. So my undergraduate degree was actually in the most broad thing you could possibly get, liberal arts and culture. So it's a smattering of everything. It presents some unique challenges because when you want to go to grad school like me, it's okay, so how do I take the steps to do that? And the thing that I did and I was recommended to do is get a master's degree. A lot of times, and I think this is probably more true in the sciences than it is for humanities, as far as I understand it, you just jump straight from bachelor's to PhD oftentimes. But for me, not really an option just because I'm basically coming from knowing nothing about the specific subject I want to study to then jumping into a PhD. So that was one of the big things for me.
Yeah, so I call that building the bridge because different people have different experiences. And the thing is, for them to have confidence in you to come in and be successful, they need to see some background of that, some demonstration of success. And so the master's can absolutely do that for you. Tell me, so what kind of master's did you pick and why?
So the master's I ended up doing was linguistics, which is the field that I want to go into for the PhD. It was an online program. I'm actually still in the process of finishing it up right now. And it was perfect for what I needed because I could still stay here in Idaho. I could still finish up my undergraduate degree. And I actually ended up doing another master's degree here just for fun. That was a kind of a side story, but it allowed me to kind of be very flexible, which was perfect. And so what I was able to do actually was to get into the master's degree, you still needed some prereqs to get you up to speed on some stuff. So I ended up doing those online too, which was perfect. I transferred those credits and they worked out great. And then I was basically set to go when I graduated to jump right into the master's degree.
Okay, wait, no, I have more questions. So you're finishing your undergrad at New St. Andrews.
Yep.
Then you're also taking online courses.
Yep.
At the same time you're finishing your undergrad?
Yeah, just a couple. It was just a couple prereqs. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, why didn't you just take them as part of your undergrad?
So that's what I ended up doing is I took them. So they were required for the master's program, but I did those credits and they ended up applying or transferring over to my undergrad degree, which was perfect.
Oh, okay. And where was the online master's and these credits from? The same school you're currently attending or a different institution?
No, it's from a small institution in Dallas, Texas called the Graduate Institute of Applied Linguistics.
Okay. So very niche.
Yes.
Okay. Was that recommended to you or how did you find that?
Yes. So that was recommended to me because I know a couple people who have been associated with that program. What was also super nice is that the school I did my undergrad at, New St. Andrews, already had an agreement with them where it's, yeah, we'll take some of your undergrad credits for our degree. It was perfect.
Right.
It was exactly what I needed. The dean was like, I want to go study linguistics. And he was like, we have just the thing for you, actually. So it was perfect.
That's awesome. See, that is really good because a lot of people get stuck in this middle spot where they're like, I don't want a whole new master's or I don't want to redo undergrad. And so there are these things like this. You just have to make sure you're making an informed decision. Will these couple of classes, A, get me to where I want to go? And then B, is that enough? And a lot of times it can be. You don't need a whole nother thing. So that was enough to get you into the master's. And then who was the master's through?
So that was the degree in Dallas, Texas. I got those undergraduate credits through them, and then they allowed me to jump into that program.
Okay, so It was kind of like an onboarding almost.
Sure,
exactly. Take these couple of classes and then we'll onboard to the master's. And then you're doing another master's right now. Tell me about that.
So, sorry, the story is very complicated. So this one that I just described is the one I'm currently in right now. But while I was taking classes, either prereqs to get into the one I'm in right now, the linguistics one, I ended up doing one here in Moscow at New St. Andrews College. That was more just because they had this thing where you could take the 2 years, make the first year of the master's your senior year of undergrad. So it took only 5 years. So that was like perfect. It was just what I needed. The reason I wanted to do that in addition, because I already knew I was going to go for this one in Dallas, get this linguistics master's degree, was that it really helped me strengthen my ability in some of the ancient languages that I got really interested in. And that comes into the story later too, for applying to PhD programs.
So you're doing this pretty quickly. Everyone's different. Some people come right out of undergrad. Some people are like 40. There's a lot in the middle. So you're doing all of this, like finishing up undergrad, direct to master's, and now like direct applying to PhDs. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, more, because people want to know more. Do you mind sharing a little bit about like your GPA or anything like that
Yeah,
to
totally.
know like how competitive you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So in undergrad, I got a 3.7, and I should actually pull up the numbers here. So the master's degree I did at New St. Andrews right after the undergrad was like a 3.58.
Yeah.
And then when I'm currently finishing up, I'm sitting at like a 3.91 or something.
Oh, nice. Yeah. And like those are all really great scores. Truth be told, there's not much of a difference between like a 3.5 and a 3.9. They're all right. Like it kind of says, hey, you're capable. You did the work. So I'm never worried when people are like, well, my GPA is low. It's a 3.5. I'm like, that's not low. And obviously yours are above that too. So that makes a lot of sense. Okay. The question I think becomes, why get the PhD? What's drawing you to do this?
Yeah, which is a question I've been thinking a lot about as I've been applying, obviously. So for me, I guess a big part of the story is me wanting to become a teacher and a professor. It's obviously the natural thing to do is look for a PhD. Sometime in undergrad, I got hired to teach Latin and Greek. We had studied that in undergrad. That was one of the things we did. And I ended up really enjoying that a lot. And that kind of led into some other positions that I took. The one I'm currently in, I'm teaching Latin and Greek here at New St. Andrews. And that's been a great experience too, just to develop that. This is all leading to, I really want to do a PhD so that I can get into the teaching world. And then on the research side as well, especially as I've been doing my master's degree in linguistics right now, I've just really enjoyed the research. The reason for linguistics is also a long story, which we can get into too, but that's just been really encouraging to see that it's been super fun. I enjoy working with professors and other students and stuff like that and writing papers. So ideally for me, that's a goal, is to become a professor and then a researcher as well.
Okay, so yeah, the PhD is like a done deal in that regard. How many papers have you worked on thus far?
Good question. I'm always trying to continue to work on papers. I've presented at a couple conferences here and there. I have one paper in review at a journal right now. The big project is getting this master's thesis locked down and ready to go. So once that happens, I'm looking to hopefully take some of that and see if I can get that published.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's really smart. You have to get everything you can from that.
Right.
So definitely get that published. It's a big help. Okay. So you're applying to PhD programs. Tell me about this. Like, what were you scared of? Tell me what the process looked like for you and things like that.
So I think the biggest problem for me, just fast forward, or I guess go back in time a year, it was like, I know I want to do this. Where do I even start? There's so many like moving parts with how to get into this, who do I talk to, where do I apply, all these different things. So this is where you guys come in really helpful, because it was like, okay, I need someone to tell me, just walk me through the process. And so that was kind of my big concern, is like, I don't know. And also it was like, I have all this stuff I've been doing, which I think is probably good. I don't know if it is. I don't know how to market myself. That was another thing. And so just learning about how to do that really well and reach out to professors and say, here's what I'm looking for, here's what I'd love to do. And just asking people, that's like another thing that's been really helpful. And you'd be surprised at who will respond.
Yeah, tell me more. So people, they will say, oh, I've tried to reach out and nobody responds. Or some people will say, oh, I've had great luck. And I think it's usually somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Some people are never going to respond. Some people, as you point out, are going to be helpful. And a lot of it is how you approach it.
Yep.
What do you think you did well in that space?
So I spent the end of the summer, early fall, writing a ton of emails to a lot of different professors. And through that process, not everyone responded. And if some people did, it wasn't like, because usually what I'm trying to do is actually just get a chance to talk to them. And just, I'm really curious about what you do. Love to talk over Zoom or something. And there's generally 3 responses that you get. It's, nothing. It's just, it fell in their inbox. That's totally fine. You just move on.
Right.
Then there's the, hey, thanks for reaching out so much. I'm super busy right now. Here's some thoughts. Have a great rest of your semester or whatever. And then there's the professors who are super excited to meet. They're like, oh, you have this really weird niche interest that I also have. Who would have thought, you know?
Mhm.
And so a lot of times it's funny. Obviously, they're very busy people, but I think a lot of times people, they're like, oh, this other person is interested in what I do. That's interesting. So we should talk about that. And so I had several experiences like that last fall, in particular, just meeting with professors over Zoom. I had a chance to go visit some campuses, which was super fun, and talk to professors in person. But it's not all going to be like that, obviously. You're going to get people who just don't respond, and that's how it is.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. You sent a ton of emails. I think people think this is like, let me send 4 emails and
Yes.
call it good. Like, that's not the thing. So being willing to do that work, to uncomfortable with, lack of responses, right? It's a very ambiguous process. Honestly, this really sets you guys up to do the PhD, right? Like, this is like, I say the PhD is a marathon. This is like a 10K, right?
Yeah.
You're starting to understand things are going to mess up. People are not going to respond. It's not going to always go as planned. How do you handle how did you handle all the ups and downs, like those feelings throughout that process?
Yeah, that's a great question. Every time you get a response, it inspires you to write another email. You're like, oh, somebody responded, which is a great way to continue on. Because it is disappointing that I spent a lot of time crafting this email. As long as you can remember that they're human beings, they're not going to see all their emails, it's totally fine. That, I think, is just a great way to think about it. And somebody will probably respond. So it's just a matter of, like I said, sending out a lot of emails, putting in the work, and crafting a really good email. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. That makes sense. I think you hit also a good point, which is count the wins. Like, little tiny wins do stack up. So appreciate them when they happen. Like, the older I get, the better I get at doing this. Because if you go months without it, whatever.
Right.
But so it's like to really appreciate when things are good. Like, let's appreciate that. Because I have kids, so there's always somebody sick. There's always an event. So it's like, oh, wow, I have a week where nobody's sick. And like, okay, do some stuff. So I appreciate that. Okay. So how many places did you apply to? What did that look like for you?
So I actually ended up only applying to 5 places, which is on the low end of places to apply to. There's a couple reasons for that. I think at the beginning I had big dreams. I was like, maybe I'll apply to 20 places. But on one level, you have to restrict yourself because the applications that you do make are not going to be that good if you're just applying 20 places. You have to restrict yourself. I think in retrospect, I probably would have applied to a couple more, but I really wanted to focus in on the programs I really wanted to go to. It's a good strategy to apply to places that are maybe not quite your top tier schools or whatever. But I really just focused on the 5 schools that I really wanted to go to through a lot of talking with professors and asking their opinions on stuff. We kind of whittled it down from probably 12 to 5. I thought, you know what, this year, for this cycle, I'm just going to apply the ones that I really want to go to that are like the top schools. If it doesn't work out, we'll go again next year. It's not the end of the world if we don't make it this year. So just keeping that in mind too. And then if next year I need to apply to more schools, that's totally fine strategy for this cycle.
Yeah, I like that. And it's like being real with yourself. It's saying, I am most excited about these places. I didn't apply to 12. I only applied to 5. So I know the odds are lower, but having a really healthy thing of life is good. Yeah. If I don't get in, the world keeps turning. So that's a really good way to do it. And you did get into one of your top places. Could you share more about that?
Yes. So far, I've gotten into the University of Edinburgh, which is over in Scotland.
That's exciting. So were you aiming to go abroad, or was it just happen to be a really good program?
So I've always liked the idea of going to the UK, especially for school. But this particular program just has a really good linguistics program, as far as I can tell. And I really connected with one of the professors there, actually, which was super awesome. So I think, actually, and I'm thinking back, the very first email I sent, like last summer, was to the professor there. And he responded to me and had like a great email. He's like, yeah, let's chat. So we ended up chatting once or twice, I can't remember, and just developing the research proposal you have to do for the UK schools. And so that was just a great relationship, and I ended up applying to it. So I thought it was a great opportunity. And I was very excited, obviously, when I got in.
How serendipitous, like your very first email and then the program that ends up giving you an offer. And obviously, University of Edinburgh is, to people who may not know, it's like the Ivy in the UK, right? So it's a very prestigious school. So that's exciting. Okay, so tell me, yes, because the UK process is slightly different than the US. Very similar, of course. maybe you want to highlight some things that you saw different.
Yeah, totally. So one of the main issues that you're going to have to deal with if you want to school is creating a research proposal. And it goes by different names, I think, but that's basically the idea. And different programs have different requirements, obviously. But the main idea is you have to show them, here's what I want to do for my dissertation or thesis, basically, which is very different from the American schools, because as far as I know, it's like you get to that at the end of the program, you take a couple years of classes first or something like that. It depends on the discipline. But for the UK schools, you basically jump right into research and thesis/dissertation writing. So you kind of have to have a good idea of what you want to do and how the advisor will help you accomplish that. So that was also, because I knew I wanted to apply to UK programs, but that was another thing I was worried about. I was like, how am I going to take what I have, my master's degree or whatever it is, and try to get something together to really make a convincing proposal? And that's where definitely reaching out to professors is super important. And some programs, if I'm not mistaken, even require that you do that, because you have to have a proposal.
Like,
they have to be like, yes, this person has a good proposal and let's go ahead and do it. And the professor that I reached out to was super helpful, not only in the stuff that he said and gave me, and so I sent him some drafts and he commented on it, it was great, but also pointing me to other people. He was like, oh, you should go talk to this guy. And that was great too. So I just worked on that and put something together based on all of those comments and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call out. So the UK, in my view, how I describe it is they tend to be a little bit more strict or a little bit more rigid in what they're looking for. They're like almost like a job posting. Hey, we want someone with, 10 years of Greek experience or whatever. And then they'll say on there, please contact faculty and make sure your proposal is acceptable. And like you said, then you work with them to make sure it makes sense. There's still no guarantees at that point. It is wild to me. Like, you basically have this person saying, yep, this is a good proposal, and there's still no guarantee. But so the US is like a slightly more hazy version of that. You're not required to contact faculty, but it's highly encouraged, depending on the space. And then you are crafting a research pitch, not a full proposal in most programs. Some will ask for it, but it's not the de facto. So again, very similar, but of course, a lot more ambiguity on the US side. And then the US too, depending on the program, you may jump right into research. You're going to take classes as well during your PhD, right? Some?
Well, so this is a good question. I think for the UK schools, you can go to seminars and maybe take classes that are of interest to your thesis, but it really is all surrounded on you researching and writing your thesis.
Yeah. So it tends to be faster as well, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I think the typical for my field in linguistics, 5 years for a US program is pretty typical. For the UK programs, it's 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Because you're not spending the first couple years of linguistics doing just classes. It's basically just the last 3 years doing the dissertation, right? So.
Yes. Okay. That's, And so they'll often require you to have a master's.
Yes, that's also true. Yep.
So differences, And so in for me, when I started my PhD, I started doing research relatively quickly, definitely within the first year, probably within the first semester, but it did get heavier.
Yeah.
And so you're just going to start at 90% and go 95 and 100. And I started at 70% and moved up to, 80, 90. Okay. So have you been to Scotland before?
No, I've never been. So it'll be interesting.
That'll be fun. Okay. What does your friends and family think about you moving across the world?
I think they all think it's super interesting. Once they know where Edinburgh is, you're going to have to tell them, oh yeah, it's in Scotland. Okay. Yeah. It's super fun because I think I have some connections over in the UK, which has been super great. Just either students from undergrad or even colleagues now who, it's funny, one of my colleagues here at the college is also getting his PhD from Edinburgh. So it's just a weird connection there. But yeah.
Okay. That's funny. When I don't want to talk about myself, but also when I started my PhD at Cornell, this is like a small world and why you should always be nice to everybody. One of the people who was in that PhD program, when I was in my master's, he was like an undergrad, how undergrads help in the lab and whatever. Yeah. So I didn't supervise him directly, but I did definitely work with him. So it's such a small world.
Oh, it absolutely is. Yeah.
In your research space, right? There are not hundreds of thousands of people doing what you do. So and you never know who will be your boss. Undergrad could be my boss. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because of the way that timing works and people do things. And so be nice to the undergrads, I guess is my
totally
my plea.
It's been funny to connect with people because you start to realize that like your professor, like my current thesis advisor, so all these different people, and then you're like, oh, I know this guy. Yeah, I know so and it's just, you start to realize everyone knows everyone because it's just it's a small world you live in.
Yes. Well, anything specific to linguistics, like if somebody is listening and they're like, I want to do my PhD in linguistics, any specific advice you would give to them?
That's a great question. I think there are a couple of things you can do to get ahead, which I, in retrospect, would have done, which I did not do. If you're in your undergrad right now and you're really thinking about going to linguistics, it's really helpful if you take like a statistics class, just a basic statistics class. That's probably good for anyone who wants to go into any sort of science, social science kind of world. I think for a lot of linguistic students, that's not required though, and it'll just become more helpful in the PhD. Another thing too, which seems unconnected, but I promise you it is connected, is a computer science class.
Oh yeah.
It'll help with research, and also a lot of the between linguistics and other areas in science happens through computer science. Just knowing a little bit about that will just help a lot. And then they'll see on your application, oh, okay, this person knows a little bit about, and then they'll be more prepared. So those are two things I would do in your undergrad. Another thing too is, and this is basic for anyone, but see if you can work with a professor or other students to get some research in. And with linguistics, it's super nice because data is all around you. It's very easy to get. Language is everywhere. So you can try to find a thing that I did, which was great, is for some of my classes, we had to do some linguistic analysis, and I chose this language that was very understudied. Not a lot of people had studied it before, and there's a lot of languages out there that you could do that with. So I just basically took the time to meet with some native speakers of the language, take down some data, and then write up some papers on it. And one of those papers is in review right now. I've also done some conference presentations on the research done there. So just things like that is just a really good thing to do as you're thinking about moving into the PhD.
I love that. Okay, so much. Stats for everybody, 100%. Every human who wants to do a PhD, take a stats class.
Yep.
And CS makes a lot of sense too for a lot of people. And especially, like you said, because it's the mathematical models to describe a lot of what's happening. Are there any particular coding skills or languages that you see most prominent in your space that people would want?
That's a great question. So I'm currently in the process of, I didn't do those things. I'm now trying to do those things. One thing I've seen mostly is just Python. Everyone uses Python. So that's probably the biggest thing that I would say. That's probably true for a lot of different fields.
Yep. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. And then you talked about, I just talked to these people. I'm writing a few papers. People get in their head about what constitutes research experience. So tell me more about this. Was this like a formal thing? Were you paid? Were you volunteering? Was it a semester, 5 years? Tell me more.
Yes. What like a really good thing to do actually is, and even in undergrad this is possible, although I did it in a master's degree, is you'll always have to write class papers, at least in linguistics. So why don't you just take that and then expand it a little bit? And so that's basically what I did for a couple of my research projects. Was I had this paper I had to write for a class. My professor was like, hey, this is really interesting. You should look into this more. You can maybe get this published. And what I did after that was, on my own time I would always send questions to the professor just in case things came up. But on my own time, I spent just a little bit of money finding the people that I needed to find who spoke this language on the internet. The internet's great for this kind of thing. Again, language data is out there. And they were just super helpful. They were like, oh yeah, let's get to work. So just spending a little bit of time over the summer, right after that paper I had written, just getting a little bit more data and just a little bit more to make the paper even better. And then from there, I expanded the papers and then submitted them to some conferences and journals and stuff like that.
Okay. I love that. That's super pragmatic. And people get in their head, they're like, I can't quit my job and do this, 80 hours a week. And I'm like, you don't have to, but you do have to be smart. You can't just I think what you're doing is you're taking good action, you're asking for help when you need it, and you're moving forward. You're not being like, oh, I hope a research project lands in my lab, because that's
almost never going to happen. It's, here's this research project. So play to your strengths and use every opportunity you have to advance your research capabilities. It's writing, paper writing, you can probably do something to make that.
That is so good. A really good advice. I hope people take this advice. Okay, anything else you want to share about, your PhD journey, or just things you learned or exciting or anything like that?
Oh, that's a good question. There's so many things I've learned. I think the biggest thing would be, especially if you're thinking about applying this cycle, this upcoming one, and you see the long road ahead of you, there's a lot of steps. a lot of people can get stuck, and I'm like this myself, on seeing the long road and then crouching in fear because it's so big. But really what you need to do is just take little steps every day. Just send one more email. Just respond to this one email or keep writing this little research paper. And as you'll find, you have to put together these applications and there's a lot of moving parts, talking to people. But if you just keep doing the small steps, it'll eventually get done. And that's after having done this cycle, you realize, okay, if you just work towards it a little bit every day, don't do it the week before the application's due. That's a terrible idea. Start very early. I started in the summertime, which was a great time, a little bit extra time in my hands to really get going on this. And just make a game plan for accomplishing what you need to accomplish.
I love that. It's really hard though, because we are looking for certainty. We are looking for certainty that if I do these things, I will 100% get an offer. And that will never be the case.
Yeah.
So moving forward on those little steps makes you feel a little bit more certain. Like each little step builds that stairway until you're, at the door, versus like staying at the bottom being like, oh no, I'll never get there. And then you never will.
Then
like,
you never will.
It really,
exactly. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much.